Hi, I'm Paul Miles and I'm at TU-Automotive Detroit 2016. And today I'm joined by Pete Samson, Senior Vice President at Security Innovation. Hi Pete, thanks for joining me.
Hi Paul, thank you for inviting me.
Now, cybersecurity has been on everyone's lips for quite some time now, but has anything changed in the recent few months, a year? Has this thing been just dormant in as much as I don't hear many OEMs talking about it these days?
It has definitely changed over the last few months, primarily as a result of some of the well-publicized hacks. Jeep Cherokee being the most famous, but just yesterday, the day before, a Mitsubishi hack, there have been BMW hacks, Nissan Leaf hacks. There is a realization now among the public for the first time that cars, being incredibly complex electronic devices, like data centers on wheels, are susceptible to the same kind of bad behavior that we experience in the regular IT world.
Sure.
The automakers, even though, and the supply chain, the tier ones and below, have, I think, for a long time been aware of this and have been doing some quiet work in the background, but it hasn't been a priority. Now it is very much a priority, being driven by a number of factors. Firstly, the negative press, and because of that, recent government interest, starting with the Markey report last year, and the SPY Act, Security and Privacy of Your Car Act, that threatens to impose security standards on the automotive industry, which of course the byproduct of that is the industry is trying to get ahead of the legislative agenda and to do the right thing themselves and build security into their cars. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of alliances being set up. There are a lot of organizations. The most recent, probably the best known, is the Automotive ISAC, the Information Sharing and Access Center, which is one of maybe 25 or 30 ISACs each for different industries that share security information and security intelligence. So a lot of these things are starting to come together, and we're now seeing the OEMs imposing requirements on their suppliers, the tier ones and below, to ensure that the software or the hardware software packages that they are supplying have been tested by, if not an independent third party, minimally by a red team, security team within the organization. So there is definitely a growing requirement that security should be thought of in the same way as functionality and performances, and that without security there's no safety in the automotive world. And with the advent of the cyber physical systems now, and now the cars can drive you and can park themselves, the threat of a bad actor being able to have effect on brakes and steering, things like that is truly frightening. Now today it's very difficult to do, and today there is we call security through obscurity. Most of the cars are different, each of the sub-assemblies are different, they're very hard to get into, but they can be done. One of the reasons Vlasic and Miller did the Jeep Cherokee hack is because they were told they couldn't. There was a 60 Minutes special, I'm sure most people are well aware of, where the car industry poo-pooed it because it was an ODB dongle that was used. And they said, well, you can't do this remotely. Well, you can, and it was done. So the awareness is there. People are now starting to demand security, and then as a follow-on from that, the security and the privacy, which comes to the whole trust. And that's an area we're doing a lot of work in the vehicle-to-vehicle space, because as automakers start experimenting with cars that talk to one another, sharing information that only they can see, that could impact safety, like warnings of speeders and wrong-way drivers and potholes and ice and things like that. The messages that go between these vehicles, and they could go up to 1,000 times a second in full deployment, have to be secure and private.
Because one car could infect another car.
That's right. So there are a lot of procedures and protocols in place to ensure that the V2V system is inherently secure. And an advantage of the V2V system is that the original designs were made just as there was a great awareness about the need for security and privacy. So security and privacy were critical design elements built into it. So it is probably the most secure communication mechanism that will be implemented in automobiles. And if one wanted to hack a car, the V2X system's not the way you would do it.
Sure.
But it's very important. It's got to be secure and private and trustworthy, because the only way people will use it is if they know that they're not being tracked, and if they know there's no false positives and things like that, because you only want a warning that you're going to crash if you're really going to crash. So it's very important that the messages the cars send are 100% credible and accurate, haven't been changed in transit, things like that. So,
but at the same time, just as we have updates on every security software you'll have on any PC, would you have to have the same updatable over-the-air updatable systems in cars? And if so, will it be car maker by car maker, or will there be a standardized approach to this?
It is essential that software is updated, will be updated over the air. Just the pace of software. With over 100 million lines of software code in a high-end car, and with security updates and software updates and people loading applications onto their cars just like they do on your phones, there will be updates. And the traditional way of updating a vehicle by taking it to the dealership just isn't going to work anymore. So over the air is the way to do it. Now, saying that, it's very easy. Updating a phone or a set-top box or a laptop, if it doesn't work, your life is not at risk. So there are a lot of problems that need to be addressed. But there's 3 or 4 companies that are building very robust over-the-air software updates and firmware over-the-air update capabilities. Whether there's going to be a standard, I don't think so. I think there's going to have to be guidelines. What constitutes a totally secure software update? How do you sign the code, for example? How do you secure the certificates on the car that allow you to transmit and receive? All of these things are being addressed, and they're bringing together a lot of the core technologies that we know from the IT industry, with just that extra element of danger of doing it. A kind of Tesla, of course, advantage of building a car from scratch over the last few years. They will build that in already, and they're doing over the air, obviously, not 100% foolproof, but far better than anything else that exists in terms of keeping their software current. The other automakers need to do it, and they are doing it, and there's probably going to be 3 or 4 different approaches, but following the same guidelines. It's strong recommendations. I don't think there's going to be there's not going to be a government mandate, as far as I know, on how you secure your over-the-air, but you have to secure it, and you have to be able to prove it's secure by adapting, whether it's a FIPS certification or whatever. It has to be there, and it has to be there for a long time. One of the things we're working on is quantum-resistant algorithms, because quantum computers are now going to be capable within probably the next 10 years of breaking traditional security. So the RSA and ECC algorithms that are used to sign code and secure messages are going to be relatively easily broken 10 years' time. The challenge with cars is the average car's on the road for 11 and a half years. So you're designing a car now, you add 2 or 3 year development to 11 and a half years, you're already 15 years. The cars you're designing now are going to need to have quantum resistant capabilities, otherwise they're all going to be, not only are they going to be open to being hacked, they cannot be retrofitted by software. It's a completely different set of capabilities built into the chips.
So you think the car makers should be thinking of that 15 years time at least?
They should, and I believe they are. Without mentioning the name of the automaker, I was at a conference where someone asked a question of a major OEM. What is your reaction to a quantum threat? And his exact words were, that would be the kill switch for our business. So it does need to be addressed. And there are ways to address it. It's not that complicated, but I just use that as an example to say, you've got to think more than 10 years ahead when building a system like the over-the-air software updates, because the cars are going to be there. And building a new car, designing a new security environment is hard, but we know how to do it. The ecosystem. Tesla proved it. The real challenge is how do you secure the cars that are already on the road? How do you retroactively secure those? How do you keep those from harm? And that's more difficult. And it's 50% technical and 50% educational. In terms of the driver has a certain responsibility for what he or she allows to run in that car.
Sure.
And some of the stuff you plug into that car could easily have dangerous elements to it.
So you just like choosing the right grade of oil and making sure it works.
It does indeed, except the oil won't kill you. Malware could.
Well, thank you for talking to me. Thank you very
thank
much.
you, Paul.
Thank you.